Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and in this video I'm going to show you how to draw a dahlia. Dahlia? How do you say that? Anyway, either way, I'm going to show you how to draw a dahlia and walk you through step by step how to do it. Just before we start though, if you want to do this step by step on a worksheet with me instead of having to freehand it, you can grab my free worksheet down below. And let's get started. So for this video, I'm going to be using micron pens. I have the size 1, 3, and 5 here. You don't have to use these pens. You don't even have to have 3 different pens. You can just have one pen. I don't care if it's a ballpoint. I don't care what kind of pen it is. Anything you have is totally fine for this video. I also have a pencil. You could do this whole flower in pencil first and then go over it with your pen if you want to, but I'm just going to be using this to draw some basic outlines before we start. And I'm using rhodia paper, which is just a really nice plain paper. I just have lots of this kicking around because of my brush calligraphy, but if you don't have any of this paper, again, same as the pens, doesn't matter what kind of paper it is, anything that's kicking around is totally fine. So we're going to start by drawing the center of the dahlia. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw 2 sort of triangular shaped-ish rounded triangles in the center. So you're going to draw sort of a rounded triangle facing the top. And then another one right beside it, again, sort of rounded. They don't have to be identical, just sort of similar, touching each other. Next, you're going to draw some sort of pointed shapes into the center here. Essentially what we're doing is we're drawing the middle of the flower and making it look like it's sort of closing and a little bud in the middle. So a couple more sharper looking shapes pointing towards the middle. And then you can do one that sort of closes it off here, again with a point into the middle, and sort of fill in those gaps. I promise this is the hardest part of the whole flower. And again, it doesn't have to look totally identical to mine. You just want it to be this sort of general shape, looking like it's sort of the middle part closing in on itself. Next, we're going to draw a couple petals that are opening up a little bit. So from the side of this one, you're going to draw one that's kind of coming out, again, sort of a rounded triangle, getting a little more rounded now. And same thing on the other side. Doesn't have to be identical, but a similar shape. And these ones are going to be kind of folding over. So you're going to add this little fold on the side. Same thing on this one. Then we're going to do one up from the middle. And 2 more right beside it, as if they're sort of overlapping all with each other. Now, if you feel like you need to pause the video at this point and try and get yours to look similar to this, feel free to do that. And you can also use that free worksheet that I was telling you about. So again, these are going to have folds on them as if they're sort of folding and opening up to that middle one here. Then we're going to start adding some petals coming out this way, and you want them to kind of look like they're folding towards you, so they're going to be shorter. So these ones are going to come out and be a little more rounded than the rest. Okay, so you can kind of start to see now that the ones in the front here underneath that center of the flower are folding out, and the ones on the top are going upwards. So it's going to look like the flower is on a bit of an angle. Then you're just going to keep on adding more petals. So up to you if you want to start with the ones on the top or the ones on the bottom, but you're essentially just going to kind of fill in a rough circle. So at this point, I generally would grab a pencil and draw the general shape of a circle that I want to fill out with my flower. It doesn't have to be quite this big. You can do whatever size flower you want and just start adding your petals. As you're adding these petals, you want to just not overthink it. Nothing in nature is perfect, and so if this were ever to be a perfect circle, it would look a little bit odd. Or if all of your petals were exactly the same, it would look a little strange. So just don't overthink it. Just keep adding that general shape. And I think I'm happy with the way that this looks. Again, nothing's going to be a perfect circle, and so if there are spots that look a little bit less perfect, it's totally fine. You just want to kind of get the general shape of a flower because dahlias usually are opened up in a pretty good circle. So once I've done that, I generally will erase my pencil lines, clear things up a little and see if I like the shape of this, which I do. So now I'm going to take my 0.1 pen and I'm going to start adding my detail lines. So as always, if you've been watching this series so far, you know that your detail lines should always point back to the middle. And so what we talked about at the beginning, what we're doing is the ones down here are going to look like they're pointing down and the ones here are going to look like they're opening up. And so these ones on the bottom, you're going to start your lines and curve them out at the edge of the flower or at the edge of the petal so that it looks like it's bending down. Remembering that all of your shading lines should be pointing back. So if I were to follow all of these shading lines I've been doing, they would all be pointing back towards the center of my flower. All right, so the bottom ones are detailed. Now I'm going to do sort of the center part, and as always these two front pieces are going to follow slightly different rules. So where these petals are meeting here, that's where your shading is going to start, and it's going to point upwards instead of starting at the top and pointing downwards. So because those petals are supposed to be looking like they're going up, that's how I'm going to shade them. Then on these petals that have folds, I'm only going to shade on the inside of the fold. So this would be the outside of it, and this would be the inside. And so I only want to add detail on the inside of that to make it look like it's a little darker in there. And I want that folded part to really pop. Same thing with these ones with the folds on the back here. I'm only going to shade the inside of them. And then this last one is pointing upwards, so that's how I'm going to shade this one. And these ones you can add a little tiny bit of shading on them just so that they don't look plain, but I usually don't do too much with those center ones at this point. And then I'm going to start adding it to all of these ones pointing outwards, and you're going to do it the same as you did on this top petal here. So starting from where your petals are overlapping, just bringing some lines in an upwards direction. Again, never straight lines, you want them to be curved. And the amount you curve them is going to affect the way that your petal looks like it's bending. If you feel like rotating your page might help you with the angle of doing these lines as well, feel free to rotate the page. There's no problem with that. Okay, so we've got the basic outline and the shading done. Now I'm going to take my heaviest pen, the 0.5, and I'm going to add some contrast. So this is where your flower will really start to pop. Again, if you don't have different size pens, just use the same one and thicken your lines. So first I'm going to just go over every petal with the thicker pen. And then once you've done that, you can look at where you think you might want to add a little bit more contrast. And usually what happens is you want it a little bit in the middle. So where those petals were folding, I'll add some darker lines in here, give it a little bit of shadow. And where your petals intersect, And then I'm gonna do a little tiny bit in spots where they intersect on all these edges as well. Doesn't have to be on every spot, but I find where your petals are overlapping, adding just that little tiny bit makes it really pop. And that's it for your Dahlia, or Dahlia, whatever the heck you call it. You know what? Actually, if you're watching this video, can you leave me a comment down below and spell it out phonetically for me? Like, how the heck do you say that? Dahlia, Dahlia. I feel like this might start a serious debate. Before I jump off, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because I put 2 new tutorials out every single week. And make sure you've grabbed the worksheet for this and the worksheets for the other florals in this series. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.